more of an adaptive policy would make more sense in a country like Canada. At the same time, we live in one of the richest countries in the world, and we can't give clean drinking water to so many communities in this country, especially First Nations communities. I think that's a bigger problem, and given the impact we can have on stopping climate change, so quote unquote, surely that's a much more reasonable, sensible use of tax dollars would be to provide a big program to finally solve that problem. But just let me point out one more thing about the whole climate change thing. And we're not talking here. This is not a climate change segment, but it's a good illustration of the kinds of points that we're trying to make, and the problem that we have when we make points on this or other topics of being shut down and called names and canceled and deplatformed and the like, to use the phrases that are out there. Nick, we have the 9th largest economy in the world. We have the 2nd largest country in the world. We have the coldest on average country in the world. And with the vast differences, even most Canadians probably don't appreciate how big this country is. If you want to drive from Ottawa to the next province over, not Quebec, but Manitoba, that's a 2 full day drive. Okay? That's the distances that people have to travel just for work, let alone going from one community to the next, are so vast in this country. I'm surprised that we are only producing 1.5% of greenhouse gases in the world. And that, to me, is a pretty strong indication of how environmentally conscious and responsible Canadians actually are. And so rather than beating them over the head, I'd be giving them a pat on the back on this. And when the government or the opposition parties these days says we have to do our part, I'm going to say to them, no, we are doing our part in Canada. What you want us to do is China's part. And I'm not willing to do China's part because I can't. We're just not big enough. So
no, you're quite right.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, that's some. There's a lot of tobacco in there for smoking too.
But they want to shut you. They're going to want to. If people in the government are hearing this, and some of these laws get put into place, they actually become law. Some of what they're talking about. You're going to have inspectors coming in trying to shut us down overnight because somebody's going to be offended, rather than coming back with a rebuttal that is sensible, that is science-based, that is well thought out, that, in other words, come back and persuade me that I'm wrong, because I really am open-minded about this. I don't just reach my positions because of some abstract ideology. I actually thought this through. I've weighed the evidence. I've looked at this stuff, and I'm going, okay, I'm an intelligent, educated human being like you, Nick. I'm perfectly capable of drawing my own conclusions, and if I'm wrong, I would rather be shown that I'm wrong than to keep on moving forward in the wrong direction. So don't tell me I'm a climate change denier. Okay, don't tell me that I'm an anti-masker Neanderthal. Explain things to me, okay, and prove to me demonstrate to me where I'm wrong. Believe me, if you persuade me, I'll change my position on these things.
Well, getting back to these laws, the other thing that bothers me about them is who gets to be the arbiter of what is being rude or what is offensive and what isn't. As the old saying goes, the government does nothing well and most things poorly. I have relatives that work for the government, and I'm not casting all government workers in the same mold, But the reality is there's a lot of truth in that saying, because government by its nature is very inefficient. And that's on a good day. So now you want to turn them loose with a gavel of fairness? Are you crazy? When did that ever work? So there's a lot here that I think people need to understand, that when you give government this kind of power or allow them to take it unto themselves, you are asking for all kinds of problems you had no idea even existed. And that's, part of what bothers me about it is I don't trust the people in positions of authority to surrender that authority willingly when the need for it is over. There's only one guy I know of that's ever done that, who was given complete carte blanche power, and that was Winston Churchill. And at the end of the war, when the war was over, he returned that power and reinstored democracy the way it was before the war, because the need for that power was over. And that is the kind of thing, I just don't trust anybody else to do it. And as long as Winston Churchill is still dead, I don't see anybody out there that I would trust with that gavel. So now you've got a bunch of people, and just like everything else the government does, when you establish a new program, it becomes immortal. There's no such thing as, if somebody can show me a government program that's died because it reached its mandate and all of a sudden was no longer useful, I'll give you $100. It just doesn't happen, because these people like their jobs, they get comfortable in them, and then they say, how do I keep it? What do I need to do to be able to hang on to this? How do I justify my existence? And that sounds, rather harsh, but at the same time, it's also pretty hard to argue with, I would think. So I'm going to shut up and let you see if you can poke holes in that.
Poke holes in that? Oh, I don't think I can. Well, the only hole that I'd poke it in is to point out that a government program can't be immortal, because to be mortal you have to be alive. But that's
Okay.
so probably the wrong. But I take the point. I'm just having fun with you, Nick. I'm being totally and excessively pedantic. Okay, but immutable, never ending. I take the point that you're making. I think it's very true. And of course, one of the reasons why programs never end is because they never actually solve the problem that they were designed to solve. And so that only raises the question, well, then why do we keep on doing it if we already decided that it's not working? So, we have to then expand it. That's the problem. The problem is we have to expand it. Of course, every single time that you come up with a program or you point to a problem, that there's already a plethora of programs in place to address, but the problem still exists. That implies that the existing programs to deal with the problem were all wrong. They're all mistaken. And so one wonders why you don't, when you hear progressives say, we have to do this to eliminate poverty. We have to eliminate child poverty. Okay. And, great. A worthy goal. I mean, fine. I think there are problems with the whole notion of trying to eliminate child poverty. There are problems with defining what that is, et cetera, but, take it at face value. I'm saying have at it, right? But before we implement a new program to eliminate child poverty, maybe we should ask ourselves, or let's list all of the programs that are in place right now, and let's terminate all of them, because clearly they haven't worked. But that never happens, because, then everybody thinks, well, you don't care about children. And,
exactly.
And this is just another perfect illustration of the point that we've been making this whole segment, Nick, is instead of explaining what is so effective about the program that ought to be at face value, that is on face value ineffective. So if a guy like me or you come along, Nick, and say, well, why don't we pull the plug on this if we're going to try something else? Because if we have to do something else, clearly this wasn't working. So that's a pretty logical position to take. And what is the response to that? Well, you don't care about children, or you don't care about sick people, or you don't care about the homeless. Okay, I mean, those.
Well, you know what? I get very tired of hearing that. Like, you don't care. How do you know what I care about? Where are you when it comes to issues that matter? Instead of this nebulous stuff like climate change. Where are you, what, do you care more about climate change, or do you care more about clean water on reserves? Do you care more about, some kind of symbolistic nonsense like save the trees, but you're willing to let people live in poverty in Canada or homeless on the street? Okay, you say, I don't care, but how do you demonstrate any more compassion than I do?
True enough, Nick. Listen, we're coming to the top of the hour, so we're going to have to take a break, Nick. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to the live show, stay put. We'll be back in a few minutes. If you are listening to the podcast, thank you for joining us. And part 3 of this week's episode will be posted on Monday morning. So thanks again for listening. And if you're listening live, stay put. We'll be back in a few minutes here on the Nick and Joe Show on ThinkRadio.ca.